Hello and welcome back to Mark's Garden UK at Rose Cottage near Nantwich in Cheshire, and I'm back in the shady fern garden at the very rear of the cottage. And you saw me plant out this garden in one of my videos. You also saw me lay this patio, so if you want to know how to lay one of these patios, just check out that video on my channel. Now in this garden I have my collection of tree ferns, I have arum lilies, hostas, many different varieties of ferns, and all around on the ground I have a ground cover plant called Mind Your Own Business. I'm going to come back to that because I want to give you a bit of context. If you've been watching my channel, you'll know that I've embarked on a bit of a project, which is, can I make an income from my garden? And as part of that project I set myself a little task of creating 10 miniature projects, each of which make £300. And essentially that's what this video is today. And we're also going to demonstrate how to propagate Mind Your Own Business, which is this wonderful green carpet all around my feet at the base of all these plants. Mind Your Own Business is a fascinating, curious plant. Curious because it's got 12 different names, and I've written them all down here because there's no way I could have remembered them. Let me just throw a few at you. Mind Your Own Business, of course. Baby's Tears, Angel's Tears, Peace in the Home, Bits and Pieces, I can understand that one, and Paddy's Wig. I don't know who Paddy is, but he's got an unusual wig. Anyway, getting back to the plot, I bought 20 of these plants and I planted them only 2 months ago at the beginning of July, and it's fascinating and incredible how quickly they've grown. That is how big they were when I put them in. Now I put 4 in a little space behind me, and I'm going to place these plant pots on top of them, and you'll just see how big they've grown, how fastly the carpet of Mind Your Own Business has expanded. Now what I'm going to do is, because I paid £2.50 each for one of these plants, you can see how big they were. Now to me that's probably multiplied 8 or 9 folds. Well, 8 times £2.50 is £20, so one plant costing £2.50 has multiplied to a plant which you would buy for £20. So my objective today is to lift one of these up, divide it up, and I'm going to divide it up quite savagely using a pizza cutter and a chopping board. Then I'm going to spread all the bits and pieces out on compost, which I've put in, quite novel really, a bathtub. Now we've just had some plumbing done and there was a spare bathtub which nearly went on the tip, but I thought, no, I'll use that in the garden. So my objective really is to see if I can make that bathtub a carpet of Mind Your Own Business, and then next spring I can divide it all up, pop them on, and then hopefully start selling them for around £2.50 each. Of course the project has got to try and make £300, so I reckon with costs I need to make about 150 plants. So let's start by digging one up, and then we'll chop it up. While we're chopping it up, we'll have a look at the anatomy of the plant to see how it is. But before I get started on digging it up, I'll just show you this here, because you can see here it kind of creeps along. One of its other names is Corsican Curse, and I don't know whether that's because it's quite invasive and gets everywhere, but it is creeping along everywhere. And I think it's a lovely plant. I mean, it can creep as much as it wants back here, but it's even popping up in the bits of rubble there where I'm about to lay a windy path. Anyway, let's get back to digging one up. Now, as I've already said, this patch here was originally 4 plants, and you can see how much it's grown. It clearly likes this location, which is cool and shady and damp. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to section off a portion of this, not all of it, just a portion of it, probably that portion there at the back. I'm going to use a knife to cut it away, and then to get the fork underneath it, just lift it off, hopefully in one piece. Let's go for it. These are the original pots. I'll probably end up selling it in similar sized pots to this. Anyway, the important thing is to get it up and get it planted back up again in this bathtub, which you'll see any moment. I've got to be careful here because I'm aware there's a wire for the underlighting for these plants. It looks lovely at night, this area of the garden. I think I've made a good cut through there. Now then, It looks a little bit like cress, and I was reading online that the smallest part of that will grow back and start to multiply and spread. So I won't waste that. I'll just drop it on top there. Let's see if we can get the fork under and lift it. Well. That was relatively easy. Probably the easiest bit of gardening I've ever done now. I've got a nice irregular edge there. These were planted into a mixture of topsoil and compost. I'll just level that down again and give them the chance to spread out again. It's tucked away here in the corner, so it's not as if it's really obvious that I've taken one of the plants out. And this will be our mother plant. There's quite a lot of it there. Let me just put the pots on top of it again. 1, 2, 3. So we've already got, I would say 8 if you go to the extent of it there from 1. So it's going to be quite a good exercise, this, and as you know, the objective is to see if I can make an income from my garden. I think it's going to be relatively easy to propagate. Then it's just a question of finding a way to sell it. Let's get it to the chopping board. Now, before we start chopping that up, let me just talk you through what I've done with this bathtub. I've positioned it here at the back of the garage in the compound where it can't be seen by the general public, because I wouldn't want a bathtub on display. So there it is. Now what I did was, because it's got a big hole, the drain hole, I don't want all the compost washing away. I put some weed fabric over the hole, then I put some gravel on top of that weed fabric, and then I put another layer of weed fabric, and that was before I put the compost in. I've invested in a bag of compost costing me £4, so that'll have to come off the profits when I do my final analysis. So that's where they're going to be planted. Now back here, those are the rosemary cuttings which I took with Thomas, and here's a little trough of sempervivums. Must be about 50 plants in there, so that might be another money making project. So all those were left over from a shallow bowl of sempervivums that I put into a trough at the front door. Anyway, getting back to this, here is our plant. Now there's the plant that I've just taken up. Let's just turn it over and see what we can see. Quite shallow rooted, a lot of that is soil, which I'll just gently brush off and push to one side. I might bring the camera in a bit closer actually so that you can see what I'm doing. So as I tease away at this soil from the underneath of this, I can actually see the original root ball from the original plant there in my hand, and look at all that has grown off it in the space of 2 months alone. So if I can get results like that, I'm onto a real little money spinner. There's a lovely healthy worm. I can go in the bathtub. Push all the soil to one side. Now I've got here a trug with some fresh compost in. Now if you watch my wildflower meadow video, you'll see that I put the seeds into sand and mixed them all up, and it was easier to distribute, and this is the same principle. All the bits that I chop up from this, and I can see now why it was called Paddy's wig, it does look a bit like a wig. I'll drop them in there, mix them all in, and that will make that easier to distribute across the top of the bathtub using this old rake head. So let's start chopping this up using the pizza cutter. And I'm just using the pizza cutter for kind of dramatic effect really, because I thought it might be an interesting angle, but you could just as easily use a knife or one of those herb things that you rock backwards and forwards. This is actually falling apart quite easily. Let's just go through that central bit there. Bring them back in. I suppose we have to exercise caution with this plant, given that it could be quite an invasive thing. So if you want some of this, please let me know and we'll come to an arrangement of how I can sell it to you. But of course, be aware that it could well be quite invasive. Looking at this, it's quite shallow rooted. In fact, the roots are very fine and hair-like. I don't know if you can actually see them there. And apparently each one of these little strands has the ability and the capacity to put down new roots. So we'll get on with that. Chop this bit up a bit. So let's get all those little bits into this trug, and then let's take them over to the bathtub. This is quite a nice shady little spot here in between the garage and the shed. This shed has been invaluable because I've been using it for rainwater harvesting. All the water off the top of that goes into 2 water butts. I'm going to give this a good shake, a good mix I should say. I'm giving it a really thorough mix, and this is going to help me to distribute this evenly across the top of this here, and hopefully we should see little speckles of green all the way over the surface. And you can see there, that's a lovely mix of soil and bits of mind your own business. I don't know how if this is how they do it commercially, but it's certainly an experiment which I'm going to look forward to seeing the results of. And if you want to see the results of this, of course, subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications bell. I shall now very, very gently bring those all the way out to the edge of the compost. And you will see me watering these in a moment, because I think soil plus water plus humidity is going to be the thing with this. Hopefully this will be a bed, a whole mat of mind your own business. And I think if I divide that up equally, there'll easily be 150 plants, which will prove my experiment. Now, I'm going to go and get that soil off the chopping board because there were some bits in it and I don't want to waste them. Waste not, want not. I'll put this on top as well. That will give them a bit of bedding in as well. Each one of those pieces potentially is £2.50. And there's another worm. In it goes. Worms feed the soil, you know, because they eat all kinds of things in the soil and then excrete it, and that matter which they excrete is full of nutrients for the plants. It's all part of the big ecosystem. They also aerate the soil by creating little tunnels. Right, next thing to do is give it a bit of a water. So there we go, mind your own business, chopped up using a pizza cutter and distributed over some compost in an old bathtub. I've got a polyurethane sheet which I'll place over the top of this, and that will hopefully keep it nice and humid in there. It clearly likes damp, humid conditions. Subscribe and hit the notifications bell for an update. Now the theory being, in the spring I'll be able to start dividing this up and selling it maybe on marketplace. If you want some of this, let me know in the comments box below this video, and I'll add you to a list. I've already got 2 lists, one for my pink china colocaceas, which I did in a video a couple of weeks ago, and one for my colocacia esculenta. And if you want to see those videos, of course, they're on the channel. Hope you've enjoyed that, found it informative, interesting and exciting as I have, and I'll see you soon.